So, who actually gets to make the call when America goes to war? It's a huge question, right? It really pits this need for democratic debate against the demand for a leader who can act fast. Today, we're diving into one of the oldest debates in American government. Should a president be able to send troops into battle without getting a green light from Congress? Let's get into it. Okay, so here's the fundamental question. Who holds this incredible power? Is it the president, the one person meant to lead us on the world stage? Or does it belong to Congress, the group that's supposed to represent all of us? And look, this isn't just some dusty legal argument. This is about our foreign policy. And more importantly, it's about the lives of the men and women we send into danger. This whole conflict was basically baked right into the Constitution from day one. The framers, they had just fought a war against a king. So they were, to put it mildly, pretty suspicious of giving any one person that kind of power again, especially the power to just start a war. So they did something clever, or maybe complicated. They split the authority right down the middle, creating this constant tension that we're still arguing about today. Here's how they did it. On one hand, you've got Article 1. It gives Congress the power to declare war. Super clear, no ambiguity there. The idea was that a decision this big needed buy-in from everyone. But then you've got Article 2, which names the president the commander-in-chief. That gives them the hands-on operational control of the entire military. And right there, that's the conflict. That's the constitutional tug-of-war. And the space between declaring a war and commanding the troops, well, that's turned into this massive constitutional gray area. It's in this murky zone that presidents have sent the military all over the world for all sorts of reasons, a lot of the time without any formal declaration of war from Congress at all. So this brings us to the first side of the argument we're digging into, the case for putting this power firmly back in Congress's hands. For some, this means getting rid of the president's ability to act alone completely. The core idea here isn't just about following the rules for the sake of it. The argument is that forcing a debate, making Congress vote on it, it makes everyone stop and ask the really hard questions before a single shot is fired. And that whole process, supporters say, leads to smarter decisions and builds the kind of public support you absolutely need for a mission to succeed. So the argument really stands on a few key pillars. First, supporters point to history. Long-running conflicts like the War on Terror are seen as a direct result of presidents having too much power, leading to these endless wars. Second, a real debate in Congress can stop mission creep, where a small limited operation somehow balloons into a massive open-ended commitment. It's also about hitting the reset button on checks and balances. And finally, and this one is so important, it's about the human cost. A member of Congress has to go home and look the families in their district in the eye. That forces a totally different kind of calculation about the true price of war. And if you think this is all just theoretical, get a load of this. Just between 2021 and 2023, the U.S. was involved in counterterrorism operations in 78 different countries. 78! That's a massive global footprint, and a huge chunk of it was directed by the executive branch without much, if any, specific debate from Congress. This quote from the Center for American Progress really sums up this whole side of the argument. The idea is that true American strength doesn't come from one person making all the calls, but from a system where responsibility is shared and decisions are made out in the open. But, of course, there is a very powerful counterargument. So let's flip the coin and look at the case for the president. This whole argument is built around the idea that in a dangerous world that moves at the speed of light, you need one person who can act decisively to protect the country. The thinking here is pretty straightforward. The world we live in is nothing like the world of the 1780s. Threats today, from terror cells to rogue nations, can pop up in a matter of minutes, not months. From this point of view, a president's ability to react instantly isn't just a nice thing to have, it's an absolutely essential part of our national security. The arguments for presidential authority are really practical. First, there's speed. The president can act while Congress is still trying to schedule a meeting. Second, secrecy. You can't exactly debate a top-secret raid on live television without putting lives at risk. Third, there's just the sheer logistics of it all. Trying to get 535 politicians to agree on anything, especially during a crisis, can be a recipe for total paralysis. And finally, and this is a big one, it's about deterrence. So what exactly is deterrence? Well, it's basically the practice of making your enemies so afraid of what you'll do in response that they don't dare attack you in the first place. People who support presidential power argue that if our adversaries think the U.S. has to spend weeks debating before it can act, that deterrent gets a lot weaker, which could actually make a conflict more likely. And this quote from the Hoover Institution just nails that trade-off perfectly. The very thing one side sees as a vital safeguard, deliberation, the other side sees as a critical weakness, something that sacrifices the speed and secrecy we need to stay safe. Now, this whole debate isn't just hypothetical. Back in the 70s, after the incredibly divisive Vietnam War, Congress tried to settle this tug-of-war once and for all. They passed something called the War Powers Resolution. But, well, most people today agree it was a pretty big failure. So in 1973, Congress actually passed this law over President Nixon's veto. The goal was simple: to pull back the reins on what they saw as an imperial presidency. It was supposed to force the president to talk to Congress before sending troops out. And it set a timer, a 60 to 90-day limit on any deployment that didn't get congressional approval. But in the real world, the law just fell apart. Presidents from both parties started to basically ignore it, arguing that their power as commander-in-chief was more important than some law from Congress. A really big moment was in 2011 when the Obama administration argued that its air campaign in Libya didn't count as hostilities. I mean, that blew a massive loophole in the law and pretty much made the time limits meaningless. So why did it fail so badly? Well, for one, it was full of vague words like hostilities that were just super easy to get around. Presidents found all sorts of loopholes, like claiming the law didn't apply if there weren't ground troops. But the biggest, most fundamental flaw, according to critics, is that it completely flipped the Constitution on its head. Instead of the president needing Congress's permission to start a war, the law put the burden on Congress to get enough votes to stop a war that was already happening. And trust me, that is way, way harder to do. And all of this leads us right back to the beginning. This fundamental question about war powers is just as pressing and, honestly, just as unresolved today as it was over 200 years ago. At the end of the day, it's a clash between two really important and, frankly, essential values. On one side, you have the dilemma of democratic accountability, making sure a decision as big as war has the consent of the people. And on the other, you have the demand for executive agility, the need for a leader who can act fast to protect us. So that leaves us with a really tough question. In a world of cyber attacks, global terror networks, and threats that move at the speed of an email, where do we find the right balance between caution and action? It's a question that's being debated every single day in Washington, and it's one we all have a stake in.